Welcome to another episode of Lawyers for Immigrants with your host, Yifei He, president of the law office of Yifei He, where they are dedicated to helping immigrants and new Americans. In every episode, Yifei interviews attorneys across different practice areas and asks them how they are helping immigrants. You can find this show on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and at www.yifeihelaw.com. Now here's the host of Lawyers for Immigrants, Yifei He.
Hello, welcome to our show, Lawyers for Today, my guest on the show is Justin Brandel, personal injury lawyer. He has his own practice and he specializes in personal injury law. So happy for you to be here, Justin.
Thanks, Yifei. Thanks for having me.
Great. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice.
So I've been doing personal injury now for 14 years. I've had my own practice for almost 9. And we help people all across the 5 boroughs in New York City who are victims of car accident cases, slip and fall cases, work accidents, construction site accidents, really all aspects of personal injury litigation.
Okay, and when should someone call you?
Really, the best time to call me is right after the accident. If God forbid you're involved in an accident, number one, you want to call 911. You want to get the medical attention you need immediately. But right after that, you want to call me because as soon as the accident gets reported, insurance companies and the people who hit you, who caused your accident, they're going to start working to defend themselves, and you need someone who's looking out for you. There are also timelines that are very important. If you're involved in a motor vehicle accident, for example, and you need your health insurance, you need your insurance to cover your health bills, you have to file an application within 30 days. And the vast majority of people don't know how to do this stuff, and that's where I'm happy to help.
Great. So someone's unfortunately in an accident, they would call you so that you can help them get a claim, right?
Absolutely. We're going to make sure that the right people are contacted. We're going to make sure that if you have things available to you, such as, a lot of insurance policies, they'll have something called MedPay. So even if they're not conceding that they're at fault, they'll cover a portion of your medical bills. But you want to make sure that you're always preserving your rights. For example, here in New York City, too, if you are involved in an accident that involves the city of New York or the Housing Authority or the MTA, you have to file what's called a notice of claim, and that has to be done within 90 days. And if you don't do that, you can forever be barred from recovery. And again, I'm happy to help with that.
Okay, great. By recovery, you mean what can you recover if you're in an accident?
So we recover not only for the pain and suffering that an injury will cause you, but also the time you miss from work to get your lost earnings back. If you don't think you're going to be able to go back to work, we can seek out expenses to cover the lost earnings that you'll miss in the future. Your medical bills that you've incurred up until this point from the accident, and then also people who are seriously injured and will require treatment into the future. We can help them recover for medical treatment that they'll need then. Also, if you're married, if you have a family, we can look for recovery for your spouse.
Okay, and what recovery for your clients?
I'm sorry, I missed it.
What are some of your biggest recoveries you've gotten for your clients?
Last year on a car accident case, I was able to recover over $1 million for a client. I've recovered this year, I believe the largest settlement we've had is around $300,000 for someone who was injured in a car accident. But we have run the gamut. If you're injured, it depends on your injury. But a serious injury, we can get a serious compensation.
I see. And how do you define a serious injury? What is that?
So, serious injuries, it's not just the way I define it, it's the way the law defines it. For example, in a car accident in New York, the no-fault laws are kind of strange, and you have to prove what's called serious injury. And this is why you want someone like me who's been doing this for years and years, who knows what you'll have to prove at trial in order to recover. So in New York, we define a serious injury from a car accident as Obviously, if someone is killed, but if someone breaks a bone, a fracture, if someone loses a child, the loss of fetus is a serious injury. But there are other ways we show that by, for example, if you miss 90 out, if you're impaired from the activities of your daily living for 90 out of the first 180 days after an accident, that can be a serious injury. We also show serious, significant, and consequential limitations of, say, a body part or function like your back or your neck through extended treatment, through going to the doctors, through getting the tests that you need to have done. We work on proving that serious injury. When it's outside of car accidents, a serious injury, well, I mean, it depends on what a person would define as serious injury. To me, it's something that prevents me from living my life the day before the accident happened. So if I'm involved in an accident that's someone else's fault and I can't go on the way that was, I'd call someone like me because to me that would be a serious injury.
I see. So they need to recover basically for what they were before the accident. That's when they would seek a personal injury lawyer. Am I getting that correct?
That's right. So in personal injury law, unfortunately, we can never restore you to the way you were before an accident. So we have to deal in compensation. But the idea of the compensation is to make you whole, is to make you the way you were before.
I see. So the most important question of all, do you have immigrant clients?
I do. You practice in New York City, you're going to meet people from all areas of the world. And I've helped people from, I wish I knew how many countries, but it has to be at least a dozen at this point. I deal with immigrants all of the time, and we have in my office, I have a paralegal who speaks Spanish. I have another paralegal who speaks Mandarin. We have a Cantonese interpreter on hand. We do everything we can to help everyone who's involved in these accidents.
Great. So by immigrants, I mean even people without papers. Are they? You have those kinds of clients?
So I have helped people who are here without the proper documentation. They do have a right to recover in New York State, and we pursue it like any other case. If you're here and someone breaks our laws and hurts you, you're entitled to recover, and we do what we can to help those as well.
I see. So what's the difference between someone who doesn't have papers suing for personal injury versus someone who does have papers, who's a citizen, suing for personal injury loss?
Well, so if someone is undocumented in this country, unfortunately, they're probably not working on the books, so it would probably be hard for us to recover any lost earnings for them. Additionally, if there are any issues that come up with their immigration status over the course of the case, that could ultimately affect their ability to recover because if, for example, they get deported, there's not much I can do for you at that point. But if someone is documented, you have all the rights and protections of the law. So you're more likely to have a job that's paying you. You're more likely to be filing taxes. And there we can pursue more options to make you whole.
I see. So break that down a little bit. So first of all, if you're working off the tables and you don't file taxes, you're not entitled to recover for lost wages. Is that correct?
Well, it's not as much as you're not entitled as it's that it becomes very tough to prove. So, if you're getting paid in cash, no matter what you do, that's where tax documents actually work in your favor because we can then get those documents and we can show this is what he made before the accident, this is what that person made after. If you have a cash job, even if you're here legally, even if there's someone working off the books here, there's not much we can help you with in that regard. But
Okay.
you still have options of recovery. Pain and suffering is the majority of recovery in personal injury cases, and that we don't need your employment records or things like that.
Okay. What about like an immigrant who files taxes but doesn't have immigration papers, but they file with a TIN, for example, a tax ID number? Would they be able to recover lost wages?
Absolutely. It's a problem. I mentioned it before because it's a problem I find usually with undocumented immigrants. But people with a TIN, people who are filing their taxes, we can recover for your lost earnings. Absolutely.
Okay, and that's on top of other recovery like pain and suffering, medical expenses, and loss of consortium to their family members if, say, God forbid, they died in an accident.
Absolutely. That's in addition to everything else.
I see. And what about, you said you also mentioned that it would be very difficult if during the process they get deported. So is it possible for them to pursue their claims through you if they're in another country?
It honestly depends what stage the litigation is at. You know better than anyone that the laws are pretty strict. If the government catches you and deports you, your chances of coming back anytime soon are not great. But if I can find you, if the case has gone on a fair amount, I have had a case in the past where someone did get deported and we were able to complete it. But it does make things harder. But that's also why I like to move quickly on my cases. When a client comes to me, I'm not going to sit around and wait. I'm going to litigate the case correctly and as quickly as I can. And that's an advantage you have if you're in that situation.
I see. And in what instances in the lawsuit do they have to be here physically versus they can just be somewhere else and you can just do everything here?
Well, so if a case was ultimately to go to trial, you have to physically be here. The New York courts won't allow you to testify if you're a party in an action. The New York court won't allow you to testify from out of the country. In the early phases, yes, you can do, thanks to one of the benefits of the pandemic has been that we do a lot of depositions remotely now, so those can be done from different countries. But ultimately, you're going to have to be able to be in this country is the issue.
Okay. And how long is the lawsuit generally?
They can run the gamut. Before COVID, I used to tell my clients that we'd be together from anywhere from 6 months to 3 or 4 years. Now I say it's anywhere from 6 months to probably about 6 or 7 years, just because of the backup with the court.
Wow. That's, obviously there's an incentive to settle then, right? If they got injured and they want money, they would want to settle then versus going and waiting 6 years.
Sure, we can. Sometimes though, that's not always an option. You have to fight the case as long as you can. Sometimes, insurance companies and defendants, they'll hold out making offers until the very end, regardless of how cut and dry I might think the case is. So all I can do on my end is fight as hard for you and move the case along as quickly as possible. And that's what I try and do for my clients.
I see. So then I'm guessing a lot of work involves hand-holding the clients because, they would definitely want an update all the time if they're say they're seriously injured. And so then they'll be asking you. So,
I get a lot of calls from my clients asking for updates, and they're right to call. Their life has been turned upside down. They want to know what's happening. All I can do is promise that I'm always there to take your call, that, I will always get back to you. I don't leave people dangling, wondering what's going on. But, the sad part is in my business, I can't make any insurance company pay. I can only move things along. But, clients do call for updates, and I welcome that. I'm always happy to speak with my clients, and I tell them the truth about what's going on with their case.
I see. Is there instances where you can vote the courts to get a trial quicker? For example, if somebody's being deported next week?
So the only exception that I'm aware of is the courts will make an exception for age. If you're over the age of 70, and that's once you get to the end of your case, you can ask to, when you go on the trial calendar, you can ask to be bumped up to the top of it. But I've never seen someone apply for a quicker trial because they're being deported. And as I think about it, I can't imagine a court would be too receptive to such a request. But again, it's why I try and move all of my cases as quickly as possible.
Okay, what about the insurance company? Have they been able to settle quicker, or have they been able to get into a deposition quicker, or move those phases along? If, for example, the client is in precarious situations, is that possible?
I've never dealt with it. This actual situation, but I would move the case along as quickly as possible. Again, I'm not sure that telling an insurance company or defense firm that the client's being deported or, they're in some type of situation. I have had situations where clients have been facing imprisonment, but these aren't things you necessarily want to share. Again, what I focus on and trying to move the case as quickly as possible. And in doing that, I'm hoping that we can get it done before any of these issues arise.
I see. And how do you structure your fees? Because a lot of these people got into injuries, it's no fault of their own. So, and I mean, they're not able to hire a lawyer to pay them a lot of money up front because they're already injured. They're already in a hole. So what would you do to help them?
Well, so actually all of my cases, I work on contingency. And my consultations, regardless of whether, I'm able to help you or, you decide to go with me as an attorney, my consultations are always free. And then we work on a contingency. Most personal injury lawyers in the state do this, but on every case, how it works is that the expenses that are associated with the case I put up. If we don't recover, I don't ask my clients for a dime back. If we do recover through settlement or ultimately a verdict, my expenses come off the top, and then I keep a third as my fee, which again is pretty standard in New York.
I see. Last question. Can you share some resources that would be helpful to someone who's had a recent injury and who's an immigrant?
So sadly, there aren't as many as I'd like there to be. I would recommend, number one, my website, www.callbrandel.com. You'll find information about what happens after you're involved in an accident. You'll get information on the timelines, what you need to do. But really what a person should do, the best thing I recommend is to call me. And again, I do this because I want to help people. So even if, you might not have a huge case, even if, it might not be something I can personally help you with, I'm always happy and trying to point people in the right direction. So I would say my website, I would say me, and then, you can go to the New York Courts website, nycourts.gov, and they actually have some stuff in different languages that can help you learn what you might need to do to start a case. But I really recommend, if you're involved in any type of accident, and even if you just want to get some advice and you're not sure you want to have a case, please give me a call. I'm always happy to talk about it.
Right. Obviously, like someone getting into an accident, let alone the accident itself, has to deal with the complexities of the justice system. So I encourage everyone to reach out to Justin, who's an excellent personal injury lawyer. He's down to earth, approachable, and charismatic. He'll fight your case. He'll move it along. He'll get you the compensation that you deserve. So thank you, Justin, for appearing on this show.
I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yes, and that concludes another episode. Again, thank you, Justin, and make sure you check our next episode where we interview other lawyers who do something other than immigration law, but we do immigration law. We put the grand in immigrant, and we're here to support you and your journey in the U.S. Check it out on podcasts like Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and more. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to Lawyers for Immigrants with your host, Yifei He. You can find prior episodes on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and at www.yifeihelaw.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, and sharing this show with others.